guys? It's Phil the MMA Dude back with the Split Decision Podcast, episode number 127, here with my always brilliant co-host, the Fight Geek. Fight Geek, how you doing today, bro?
Doing excellent, man. Happy to be back talking fights with you. How you doing?
Doing well. Folks, we've got a lot on tap tonight. First off, we've got my opening question for Fight Geek. Then it's a recap and review of UFC Vegas 50. After that, we're going to make our preview and picks for UFC London. And then it's off to my favorite section, listener questions and more. So Fight Geek, let me start off with this question for you. So obviously, this past weekend, we saw Santos versus Ankalaev. Magomed Ankalaev getting the 5-round unanimous decision over Santos. And I want to start off by just asking you, how good do you think Ankalaev's ceiling is? Will he be champion? Will he be in a title fight? What's your ultimate prediction for how far he will go?
Yeah, good question. Definitely think he will make it to a title fight, no doubt. Clearly, he has very few holes in his game, and while he doesn't really, flash a ton, he's a hard guy to beat. He really kind of implements the fight he wants and is able to follow through with that. So I do think he has a high ceiling. Definitely think he'll see a title fight someday. Honestly, when I look at the landscape, there's a good chance he can become the champion depending on the matchups.
Really? Interesting. Okay.
I think you saw this last weekend, even though it wasn't the most flashy performance. He stood for 5 rounds with Thiago Santos, who's one of the more dangerous, strikers in that division. And he did so, other than being, kind of flash knockdown in the second, which didn't do a ton of damage. He pretty much played with fire the whole fight and was pretty comfortably winning. So with him able to do that versus Santos on top of the grappling pedigree he has, I definitely think that he puts a total package together almost better than anybody in the division right now. Now, is it super flashy and exciting? No, but is it going to be difficult to beat or dominate? I definitely think that.
Okay, I was just going to say, slow down a second here. I mean, the Ankalaev-Santos fight was garbage. It was a horrible fight.
Well, I mean, I don't know about garbage. It obviously was low volume and kind of,
Did you enjoy it? You enjoyed that fight?
Well, it was a chess match. I mean, you had a guy standing in front of Santos backing him up the whole fight. There was always the chance that Santos would land something. But I do think after, his injuries and aging a bit, Santos isn't quite the guy he used to be a few years ago. But with that said, Ankalaev standing for 5 rounds with Santos, pushing him against the fence and pretty much controlling the majority of the action, it's pretty impressive, if not super exciting.
Yeah,
to me,
okay.
Anyways.
I think that's fair.
I would say that, you look at a fight with him and Yuri, Yuri's a wild guy. Could a guy who's as technically sound and doesn't take chances like Ankalaev give him trouble over, 20, 25 minutes? Possibly. You look at a guy like Rakic, who is enormous, but, hasn't quite shown that killer instinct in the last few fights, willing to kind of grapple and just play the game. Could that be an interesting fight that plays itself out? I definitely think so. To me, those are the real 3 players moving forward as the potential champions.
Okay, I think that's fair. So a friend of mine had recommended, and I have to admit, I do like this idea of Magomed Ankalaev versus Lionheart Smith, and then Yuri. Obviously Yuri's fighting Glover, and then what I really meant to say, so Magomed versus Lionheart, and then Jan Blachowicz versus Rakic, and then the winners fight for a number 1 contender. What do you think of that idea?
Yeah, that sounds about right. Isn't Jan out for a while with an injury?
I believe he is, yes.
But yes, I think that'd be your final 4. That'd make for a good, true number 1 contender match. And I think there's some really, really interesting fights within that mix.
All right. Are we ready to move on down the card? There's a lot to cover on this card. It was a great card.
It was. Let's do it.
All right. So Song Yadong knocks out Marlon Moraes. Marlon Moraes went from, probable bantamweight champion in my head to can't buy a fight to save his life, gets TKO'd via uppercut at 2 minutes and 6 seconds of round number 1 against Song Yadong. Let's just start off with Marlon. I hate to do this, but is it time for Marlon to hang up the gloves?
Yeah, I don't know if it's time for him to hang up the gloves, but definitely time for a big step down in competition. He seems like a guy that would fare well, in a PFL or something like that, because in the top 10 of the UFC, he seems to have been figured out.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you have any other thoughts on just kind of why that happened? Because I'll be honest, Fight Geek, I've been looking back. I've been looking back on Marlon Moraes fights, and I don't get it. I don't understand why.
Well, I think without being too rude about his previous competition. What was he? I think he was 17-4 in the World Series of Fight, and then he got to the UFC. He lost his first fight versus a Sun Tzu.
Then he slapped Aldo very easily and very quickly,
which was very, very fluky, actually. If you really go back and watch that, Aljamain Sterling basically parked his face on his knee. So that wasn't necessarily, it's a great win, but if you read between the lines there, it's not the greatest win. And then the Cejudo fight, obviously was destroying Cejudo in that first round.
Oh, yeah, he won that first round easily.
Gassed out badly, it seemed, was unable to make any adjustment. The Jose Aldo fight, I firmly believe he lost, which means, in my opinion, he's lost 6 in a row.
Yeah, and I agree with that, for the record.
Yeah, so I just think it's the level of competition as it's gotten much, much steeper. You're talking about Merab, Song Yadong, Rob Font, Corey Sandhagen, Henry Cejudo, Jose Aldo. To Marlon Moraes' credit, I'm not sure you're going to find a guy who's had a tougher strength of schedule over his last 10 fights. So that is something to be said. But I definitely think he's been figured out to an extent, and he has no ability to make adjustments, and he gasses. He has an incredibly muscular build for a small guy, and I think you really see that it taxes him to explode. So, yeah, I just think Marlon Moraes has been figured out a bit in kind of combination with fighting absolute murderers every time out.
Okay, so I'm going to put out a very controversial idea to you. I think some of the listeners might really hate this, but I'm just going to ask you. Look, when I look at Marlon Moraes, I see so much muscle. He's got a ton of muscle on him. Could he be a very successful, potentially flyweight?
He's got a tiny frame, so you'd think so, but at this point in his career, he's been carrying that muscle mass for so long that I would imagine he'd have a hard time changing his body that much.
He's got to get rid of that muscle mass, though. It's not helping him. It's hurting.
Yeah, well, getting rid of changing your body completely doesn't mean he's going to perform better.
Right.
In theory, it's a great idea, but let's say he loses his fast twitch explosiveness, which is essentially all he has to offer in a fight. Then he's just a sitting duck with no opportunity to win.
Yeah, okay. I think that's fair. So do you have any thoughts on who could be next for Song Yadong, who, by the way, he moved up 5 slots to the number 9 contender at bantamweight. I'm just looking at some of the people in front of him. Pedro Munoz right in front of him.
How about Corey Sandhagen?
I love that fight. I would favor Corey strongly, but I like that fight.
Well, cool, favor him. I would favor him too. Yeah. He's the much higher ranked guy, but Song Yadong just slept Marlon Moraes. He's been on the rise for a while now. I think if you're looking for the eye test on a guy, Song Yadong passes that. He throws extremely quick, lightning fast combinations. He's accurate. He's built strong from a good camp. I think it's time for him to fight someone real relevant, because he beats a guy like Corey Sandhagen. He's a title contender immediately. If he loses to a guy like Corey Sandhagen, it's not really that big of a step backwards.
Okay, I know. I can't disagree with any of that. Okay, moving on to Sadiq Youssef defeating Alex Caceres at 145 pounds. Honestly, I was a little bit underwhelmed with Youssef's performance. I know that he won a unanimous decision. I know he got the job done. but I'm just kind of wondering what his ceiling is now. Perhaps it's not as high as I thought it originally was. Is that fair or is that unfair?
No, that's 100% fair. I was as high on Sadiq Youssef as anyone, but he's a low output fighter. Doesn't really seem to have a real killer instinct in there. I mean, 9 times out of 10, he's the more athletically gifted fighter.
Yep.
I'm just not seeing him able to take advantage of his physical gifts, which is a little concerning to me.
And he could improve, right? He could improve because, I mean, just like his countrymen, I believe Sadiq is Nigerian, correct? I'm pretty darn sure. Yeah,
and he's still young.
Yeah, so I was just going to say, just like his countryman Kamaru, I mean, people forget, but Kamaru got so much better, So
yeah, that's true.
It's really not too late at all.
Agreed. No, I'm not saying it's too late. I'm just saying in the last few performances, I've just expected a bit more out of him.
Oh, absolutely. As did I. I was certain that Alex would not make it to a decision, and I was wrong. So,
Well, I thought Alex was actually making it interesting in some points. I know he was obviously losing and on his back foot the whole fight, but Caceres actually fights fairly well that way and was still getting, some of his shots in.
Absolutely. Okay, so let's go ahead and move on to the light heavyweight bout between Carl Roberson and Khalil Roundtree. Khalil Roundtree getting the TKO via hooks and body kicks at 25 seconds of round number 2 in a vicious beating.
Yeah.
What did you make of this?
Yeah, man. I mean, Khalil Roundtree's a vicious guy. I mean, you put him in there versus the Carl Robersons of the world, and he's going to look like that. The one thing we've seen with Khalil is, I don't know if it's a lack of experience, but when he takes that next step up, he has a hard time. But, I mean, we've seen Khalil Roundtree look like a murderer multiple times. He's looked unbelievable in a few fights, particularly his last 2. It's consistency with him, and it's putting it together when he steps up in competition. Carl Roberson, I mean, good fighter, but I really didn't think he was going to have much for Roundtree there.
Roberson was the favorite by a little going into the fight, just for the record.
That's kind of wild to me.
Yeah, I don't disagree. Really quickly before we move on, thoughts on Khalil got very emotional after the win, and he was kind of talking about he obviously had a very tough life growing up. His father was I believe the manager for Boys to Men and was murdered on tour when Khalil was just a young boy, I believe 2 or 3 years old. And Khalil got emotional, was crying a bit during the press conference. And Sean Strickland tweeted, this is the gayest thing I've ever seen. This is so embarrassing. I was wondering if you had any thoughts on Sean Strickland's response.
I really don't, man. But it sounds like you're dying to talk about it, so take it away, Phil.
I just hate Sean Strickland so much. It's impressive. It's honestly impressive how much I hate him. He has made Colby Covington seem very likable to me. You take Colby Covington, he looks like an angel compared to Sean. And more than that, Colby's a pretty exciting fighter. Haters might say otherwise, but the truth is he's an exciting fighter. Sean Strickland is it's painful to watch his fights. I feel like I'm being punished. So if there's any way to just get Sean Strickland beaten up really badly, so much so that he can't continue his career, I would really like that.
All right, you done now?
Yeah, I'm done now.
Okay, what do you think of more pressing matters like Drew Dober versus Terence Mckinney?
Woo! What a fight this was, man. What a fight.
Agreed. I mean, I was ready to crown T-Rex the new top prospect in lightweight, but Drew Dober withstand the punishment early. And yeah, McKinney burned out. Learning experience for McKinney, but I think you saw that, he has quite a bit to offer. He's a dangerous guy. Took this fight on short notice. Drew Dober's got 35 career MMA fights under his belt, so I think you saw his experience and toughness really pull through.
Yeah, now look, so I've rewatched this fight several times because I thought it was one of the more exciting comebacks in recent years in UFC history. I mean, truly. I don't know how Dober survived, but I rewatched it several times, and to me, it was just so clear that Terence Mckinney, his plan was knock him out in a minute or two, and if I don't do that, that's the end of the plan. I thought he was
I would agree.
swinging so wildly for the fences. I wasn't surprised. And if you just watch, it looked like Terence just gassed so bad.
He took the fight on 14 days, didn't he?
Yeah, but he gassed so bad it almost looked like he kind of gave up at the end.
Well, again, I mean, you ever been super, super gassed with another, pro fighter beating you up on the other side?
I have not, no.
Yeah, so I don't know. He did look gassed, and it looked like he went for the kill, and then it didn't work out, and that's how the cookie crumbles. I mean, we've seen that many times. It's not a unique situation.
Yeah, so really quick, Drew Dober called out, I thought he had an amazing call out. He called out Bobby Green for a 5-round main event. I say sign me up.
Yeah, that makes all the sense in the world. That should be a great action fight. They both are hovering around the same, ranking. I'm not sure the exact rankings, but they seem like they're in similar spots in their career. So, yeah, let's do it.
All right, cool. Moving on. Alex Pereira defeating Bruno Silva via unanimous decision. I've seen a lot of very mixed responses to Pereira's performance. Obviously, he's the guy that knocked out Izzy in kickboxing a few years ago. He's now.
Do we have to say that every single time he's mentioned?
Yes.
I mean, everybody everywhere. This guy's sole claim to fame is that he knocked out Israel Adesanya.
I mean, yeah.
No,
kinda.
It's not. He has a much more extensive combat background than knocking out Israel Adesanya. But yes, I don't see how you could have mixed results. The guy's in his 6th MMA fight, his 2nd UFC fight. He's against Bruno Silva, who I think was 17-1 in his last 18 fights.
Yep, that's correct.
He's incredibly game.
Yep.
Tough as they come, can give it back. And Alex Pereira pretty much, was in control and handled himself quite well. And, it was an MMA fight. It was a little back and forth. He went 3 hard rounds. I thought it was impressive. When a guy's got 5-6 fights under his belt and he's fighting a guy like Bruno Silva, even if his credentials are as good as Alex Pereira's, you've got to give him his credit. That was a great performance.
No, I was very impressed as well. Don't get me wrong. I was very impressed. If there was anything that was a little jarring to me, was that Pereira called out Jared Cannonier after the fight, and I was thinking, why would you call out Cannonier when you can call out, for example, Darren Till, who is, to me, so beatable, especially for his ranking?
Well, I'm sure Alex Pereira thinks they're all beatable, so I don't think he's worried about that. Right. But he's certainly not. He's not even in the top 15. There's no way he's getting a Cannonier fight. So
who would you? Okay, let me just ask you this: 5-round main event, Till versus Pereira. Who would you favor?
Well, that's going to be a striking match, so I'm going to favor Alex Pereira. I think he should fight someone like Edmund Shabazian.
But that wouldn't take him nearly as far as a scalp over Darren Till.
Well, why would Darren Till fight a 5-1 guy who's fought 2 times in the UFC and has the reputation of the Izzy killer? Why would he take that fight? Alex Pereira's got to earn it a bit. He's not going to jump to a top 8 or 7 guy after beating Bruno Silva.
I mean, what's Till 1-4 in his last 5? I mean, that's just off the top of my head.
Darren Till's an established name in the UFC, and if he is 1-4 or whatever, which in his last 5, or I'm not
that's
exactly
top of
sure
my head, yeah, but yeah.
But why would you take a fight with that little upside that's that dangerously? That makes absolutely no sense. I see him taking a more, reasonable fight, some guy who's a fringe top 15, not a guy who has an established name, who's about, is on the verge of, losing his place in the roster. Why would you fight Alex Pereira on those terms?
Okay. I mean, I think that's fair. All right. I guess just I would assume that Darren Till's down for all comers,
Well, I mean.
But I hear you. Okay.
I don't see why Darren Till. That makes no sense.
You think makes no sense, but Cannonier makes more sense?
No, I don't. I just said Cannonier is not even a possibility. Cannonier's fighting for the title next. Why would he fight Alex Pereira?
No, he wouldn't. He wouldn't. But they should make Till versus Pereira. They really should.
No, they shouldn't.
Guess they should. No. You're just upset because you know that Till would lose. That's why you don't like it.
I could care less. I have no feelings for Darren Till whatsoever.
I think you have strong feelings, and I think partly they're romantic, frankly. Okay, all right. I'm wilding. Okay.
Well, no, I'm looking at the 185ers now, so I can tell you exactly who he should fight.
He should fight Darren Till.
Well, I mean, it makes no sense. Darren Till's ranked 8th. You want him to jump 7 guys in the top 15 to fight Darren Till just because you want it? It makes no sense.
How about Uriah Hall then?
He's ranked 9th. That makes a little more sense because Uriah Hall's striking acumen could be a fun fight for Uriah Hall, to end his career on. But Brad Tavares or Edmund Shabazian are really the only top 15 guys that even seem appropriate for a guy who's 6-1 with 2 UFC fights.
Okay, let's just be a little honest here, Fight Geek. Middleweight is not exactly the most stacked division, and we all want to force Pereira versus Adesanya. So I'm trying to speed that up.
Well, if you speed it up too quick, he's going to get beat. And then you're not going to have your fantasy match.
Okay, all right.
You got to get him 4 or 5 victories. You can't have him.
He's 5-1. He's 5-1.
He's 2-0 in the UFC, and that's all that matters. So if he loses to a 1-4 Darren Till in his last 5, that really rubs the shine off. So you can't do that.
I think he beats Darren Till.
Well, what you think is an ironclad law. That's just what you think. It's your opinion.
Okay.
So there's still a chance he loses, and then he really, can't be the Izzy killer because he's not even the Darren Till killer.
Fair. Okay, all right. So
Uriah Hall's your best call, Adam.
Okay, all right, that's fair. So moving on down. Again, we cannot cover every fight. Was there one that you wanted to cover here that stuck out? I've got Guido Canetti obviously defeating Chris Moutinho. Chris infamously going deep into the third round.
I was really rooting for Chris in that one.
Yeah, no, I was rooting for Chris too, and he just got absolutely annihilated at 2 minutes and 7 seconds around.
How about the lumbering fight between Azamat and these last names are
Azamat, Mirzakhanov, and Tafon Nchukwi?
Exactly. That was a really lumbering back and forth fight, and then out of nowhere, boom, flying knee TKO. That got me out of my seat. That really got me hyped. That was some impressive stuff right there, and it was a brutal knockout the way he fell backwards on his back. That was exciting stuff.
I agree. I think Azamat looked great. I thought he's now climbed to 11-0. By the way, very very quietly climbed to 11-0. And I think he's ready for, definitely ready for a ranked opponent. Who should that be? I see number 15 Dustin Jacoby. I see number 13 Ryan Superman Spann as potential good matches.
I like that Ryan Spann fight. That sounds good.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So is that all we've got on this card?
I think so.
Okay. All right. So let's go ahead and move on to UFC London, and we're actually going to start from the bottom of the card and work our way up for dramatic purposes. And interestingly, this is rare, but the first fight of the card is one of the fights that I'm most excited for. Yep, you heard that right. Mohamed Mokaev, 5-0, versus 12-3-1 Cody Durden at flyweight is a fight I'm very excited for, and I've got Mohamed Mokaev winning this via stoppage. Am I crazy?
No, isn't Mokaev one of the hottest prospects in the UFC?
Yeah, but he's making his UFC debut.
Yeah, he's 22-0 as an amateur and 5-0, so he's actually debuting at 27-0 in the UFC. So, yeah, I'm taking Mokaev here. Really high expectations, arguably the top prospect debuting in the UFC. So, yeah, Cody Durden's a tough guy too, but definitely think this is Mokaev's fight. I
agree. I have absolutely no idea why it's the curtain jerker. I think it's a much better fight than that, but that's okay. A lot of this card's a little bit odd. So, next fight to cover, Nathaniel Wood versus Vince Morales. Who you got there?
That'll be a banger. Both of these guys like to give it as well as they take it. So I'm taking Nathaniel Wood in this one, but I do think it'll be back and forth. It'll be fun. Nathaniel Wood by third round TKO.
I got Nathaniel Wood via unanimous decision. Okay. So moving on here. What about Jack Shore, 15-0 versus Timur Valiev, 18-2?
Really like this fight as well. This is a great fight. Got to roll with Jack Shore. I know I feel like I've said this 100 times tonight, but one of the top prospects in the UFC, 15-0. Loved his last performance. This guy's trending up. This is probably his stiffest competition. Valiev's a tough out, but think Jack Shore will get it done and continue to climb.
All right, ready? I know that this is controversial. I've actually got Valiev winning this. I know people are going to be annoyed, but I do believe there's a lot of truth in that saying that, there's no such thing as necessarily a home field advantage in MMA. I think it can often just produce excess anxiety. And we haven't seen Jack Shore respond to a sold out UFC event as a heavy crowd favorite yet.
That's fair.
Yeah.
But,
so we'll see. Okay.
Yep.
Next, we've got Paul Craig versus Nikita Krylov at 205. This should be an interesting one. What do you make of this fight?
Yeah, Craig's been the hotter fighter of late, but Krylov's the bigger, more well-rounded fighter. So I'm going to go with Krylov here, getting a big victory, beating Paul Craig via second round KO.
I don't blame you at all, but I do think that Paul Craig is a very unique and odd opponent. Let's not forget that he beat Jamal Hill, via, I believe, arm break, if I remember correctly. I think that Paul Craig is going to get another submission, and I think he's going to come in the third round.
Okay, I don't see it, but that should be an interesting one as well. I like both.
Damn, you are really dismissive. I feel like that's not that crazy of a pick.
Well, no, Paul Craig's obviously a great submission guy, but, I don't think Nikita Krylov's a guy he's going to put in a bunch of bad positions, but we'll see.
All right.
The Jamal Hill fight, I think Jamal Hill got a little overconfident and put himself in a horrible position.
Oh, absolutely. Okay, so next fight, this is an interesting one. We've got Englishman Jay Herbert, 11-3-0, versus Georgian undefeated fighter Ilya Topuria, 11-0. But worth mentioning, Ilya is moving up from featherweight to lightweight, and he's got a huge height disadvantage against Jay. And I'm just wondering, is Ilya's success at 45, is that going to translate to 55?
I don't know that he'll be the same exact fighter, but obviously he's extremely skilled. All of his skills translate. I'm taking Ilya Topuria here by knockout. Jai Herbert is tall and athletic, but he does get hit, and Ilya Topuria is not a guy you want to get hit.
Yeah. Okay. Did you have any thoughts on the Ilya Topuria Paddy Pimblett skirmish? There was a skirmish in the Fighter Hotel. It appears that they exchanged a few words. Ilya threw something at Paddy, and then things got physical fast, and they tried to exchange blows. I don't think anyone connected with anything. They were broken up, but is that a fight that interests you in the future? If assuming they both win, of course.
I think Topuria is a little further up the ladder than Paddy, and like you said, he's more of a 145er, I think. Paddy's more of a natural 155er, so I don't really need to see that fight. I would favor Ilya Topuria heavily, even though I'm a big Paddy Pimblett fan.
Wait, why don't you want to see it? They hate each other. Are you kidding?
I like them both. That's why. I don't want either of them to lose.
Gotcha.
So two of my favorite prospects.
They despise each other, though.
I think Ilya is probably the better prospect. Actually, I know he's the better prospect, but I still like Paddy and think Paddy. A lot of people give Paddy a hard time because he's had some lackluster performance in Cage Warriors and whatnot. But the guy started super young. Is not a finished product. He's a little bit of a boomer bust fighter, which I think actually makes you more exciting in the end. You may not be undefeated, but there's a lot of intrigue and drama around your fights. So yeah, Paddy's interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so let's move on. Molly McCann taking on Luana Carolina. McCann 11-4, Carolina 8-2. You know, I do have McCann winning a unanimous decision here, but I'm curious what your thoughts are.
Yeah, same here. You know, Molly's gonna be the fan favorite. She's coming off a solid performance. Yeah, I'm taking Molly via unanimous decision here.
All right, moving on. We've got the return of Gunnar Nelson, ladies and gentlemen. He lives. He is alive. After over 2 years off, Gunnar Nelson will take on Takashi Sato in a welterweight bout. And this is an interesting one to me. What do you make of this fight?
Yeah, it is interesting. I'm obviously happy to see Gunnar Nelson back. He's always been an intriguing fighter. Unique style all to his own. So I think Gunnar Nelson gets this done. 2 years off is a long time. I see him, kind of grinding out a decision here.
Yeah, I'm going to take Takashi Sato by stoppage, believe it or not.
Really?
Yep, I think that Gunnar is over the hill and a little bit overrated. I think people just like to like him. I think
yeah. I'm going to go ahead and change my pick. He's going to get subbed by Gunnar Nelson. He's been subbed by Miguel Baeza, Bilal Mohammed, and Glianco Franca in his last 3 losses. Gunnar Nelson's an exquisite Brazilian jiu-jitsu practitioner. He gets that back quite a bit. He'll win by submission here.
All right. Way to undermine me on live. That's okay. I forget.
Hey,
okay.
Why let you have your soapbox when you're ranting about whatever Sean Strickland? So
Sean Strickland sucks. Anyone who likes him sucks, honestly. Okay, moving on. Paddy Pimblett, 17-3 versus Rodrigo Vargas, 12-4. I'm just going to come out and say it, Fikey. Do they hire lightweights purely to fight Paddy Pimblett? Because in his last fight against that Luigi Vendramini, I had never once heard of Luigi. Never once. So are they just hiring a bunch of no-name losers?
This guy has 3 UFC fights, though.
I saw that.
Yeah, and he won his last one, so...
I know, but that doesn't make the joke quite as funny.
I think what you're clearly seeing is Paddy's getting some very favorable matchups because the UFC understands the kind of star he is overseas. So you can hate on Paddy all you want. He's a goofball, but that dude's been selling out his arenas over there for years now. He is a star. So the UFC needs to build him up, get him a handful of wins before, they can really give him to someone who exposes him. Because there is money to be made on Paddy Pimblett.
I agree. So, by the way, I've got Pimblett winning via second round TKO. What about you?
I think Paddy will get a sub in this one. I think there'll be some scrambles, sloppy. Paddy will get in a submission. He's actually had some good success in his career with submissions and grappling. So, yeah. Definitely think Paddy will get a rear naked choke here.
Okay, all right. Moving on to the co-main event, and that is 21-11 Dan Hooker taking on 17-1 Arnold Allen. How do you see that going?
I've got Arnold Allen here by unanimous decision. Dan Hooker looks horrible this week. He's taken a metric ton of damage in the last few years. He's really searching to reinvent himself down at 145, so yeah, I don't see it going good for Dan here. I think Arnold Allen's the younger, more crisp, hungrier fighter, and I think he'll get it done.
Yeah, I have to agree with you. By the way, let's not forget, though, Dan Hooker's potential. Dan Hooker, I understand it was a while ago, Dan Hooker knocked out Gilbert Burns. Dan Hooker was a few seconds away from TKOing Dustin Poirier in a 5-round fight. So Hooker has incredible talent.
Shoulda.
Right. I mean, yeah, no, that's fair. Coulda, woulda, shoulda is fair. But I'm just saying.
He also knocked out Gilbert Burns, who was
That's what
you
clearly weren't listening. I just said that. That was what I said before the Poirier comment.
Yeah, but he knocked him out at 155, where Gilbert Burns was not nearly the same fighter.
Right. Of course.
So it's not as shiny of a victory.
Okay, that's fair. That's fair. I guess all I'm trying to say is I can't help but feel a little sorry for Dan.
Dan's had a good run. I mean, feel sorry for him. I'm sure he doesn't want your sympathy or your sorrows.
Well, he's getting it anyway. He's getting my sympathy.
He's gotten the opportunity to get in there with some great fighters, and it hasn't gone his way, and that's just the way it goes, man.
All right. Fair enough. Moving on to the main event, 5-round fight, Alexander Volkov, 34-9, versus 11-2 Englishman, Tom Aspinall. I'll go first since I've been having you go first. I've been trying to decide, is Tom Aspinall like a Chris Daukaus, or is he a true star? No offense to Daukaus, but you know what I mean. I think Aspinall is a lot better than Daukaus, and I think he's going to win via third-round knockout.
Really? I actually have Alexander Volkov by decision.
Ooh, okay.
I think this will be the most unique challenge of Tom Aspinall's young career. Volkov is 43 career fights. I think he's the tallest heavyweight on the roster, knows how to fight with his length. May not be super exciting, but I think he'll give Aspinall problems and win a split decision.
This is a slightly off-the-point question, but I'm just really curious. What do you think Alexander Volkov's reception will be in London, given the current political, geographic...
Why do you keep asking? I don't know what his reception will be.
Is he going to get booed more than anyone of all time in a main event? That's my question.
I doubt it. I'm not holding Alexander Volkov responsible for
I didn't ask you to... That was not the question.
Should
to be
all
clear.
people hate Alexander Volkov?
Did I say that?
What is the point? No, I don't. I mean,
I
don't know
did
what
not say
Alexander
that.
Volkov has to do with the war or what his views are or what he supports. All I know is that he's a heavyweight on the UFC roster who's, main eventing.
I'm just glad he was allowed in. I was very concerned, and I know the UFC was very concerned he wouldn't be allowed in. So, I'm glad that the main event is together.
But that was more for security reasons, not his personal beliefs, right?
I can't speak to that.
I'm just giving you a hard time. I would assume he won't be the fan favorite, but
well, you don't say. You don't say.
But again, I'm not really one to be talking about war on our MMA.
I wasn't trying. You're the one who's making this so weird. I was just asking if he was going to get booed. I was just asking if he was going to get booed. My gosh.
Well, on Saturday afternoon when I'm watching the UFC, I'm trying to get away from reality, not find more reasons to be pissed about it.
My guess, by the way, I think you're actually probably more right than wrong. I think it's been exaggerated. I see a lot of people writing, "Oh, Volkov's going to have the most hostile crowd in the history of the UFC." I don't think so. I actually agree with you. And not to mention, Volkov's a likable guy, right? Let's be honest. He's a pretty likable dude.
He's a soft-spoken, mild-mannered guy. Again, I don't know where he stands in all of this. Again,
I actually do. I'm pretty sure he's anti-war. I'm pretty sure he posted something about it.
All right. I'm just saying, on Saturday night, we're tuning in for the fights and to tune out the rest of the world. So I would hope people can boo him as a fighter and not as some kind of strange representation of what they're scared and mad at.
I think that's well said, actually. I think that's well said. Okay, so with that, having said all of that, are we ready to move on to a quick break and then listener questions?
Let's do it.
All right, guys. We'll be right back after this with listener questions and more. Hey guys, it's Phil the MMA Dude letting you know that this episode of the Split Decision Podcast is brought to you by TotalAggressionClothing.com. Visit www.TotalAggressionClothing.com and use the promo code 46210 to receive a special Split Podcast discount on all Total Aggression hats, shirts, hoodies, and more. Again, that's www.totalaggressionclothing.com with promo code 46210. Hey guys, it's Phil the MMA Dude back with the Split Decision Podcast episode number 127, here with my always brilliant co-host, the Fight Geek, and it is now time for my favorite section of all, and that is Listener Questions!
Alright, let's hop into them.
All right, and my phone is acting up, so hopefully you've got some of them lined up.
Yeah, it's slim pickings tonight. Hold on, I'm pulling it up. I have one right here from Jalen Ware at Strive to Be Great.
Jalen Ware, what up?
He says, which of these up-and-coming fighters has a much higher ceiling? Paddy Pimblett, Song Yadong, or Topuria, and why? Or is it a fighter I did not name? Hashtag AskSplitPod. Go ahead and kick us off with that one.
Yeah. Who's the Rachmanov, the welterweight?
Yes.
Rachmanov has definitely more upside.
I agree. Shavkat Rachmanov's my top prospect, and out of those three that Jalen mentioned, Paddy, Song, and Topuria, I would slightly lean Topuria at 145.
Yep. Even though I'm a little concerned that he moved up. To be totally honest, I'm a little nervous about him at 155 instead of 45, but still. Yep, I agree.
Okay, cool. You got anything queued up, or you want me to go again?
Okay, next question comes from our main man, and Split Podcast OG Pat Tobin. That's at Pat_Tobin. He says, which UFC fighter is getting the best out of UFC in regards to promotion, fight card placement, and money relative to their ability, getting a great deal they haven't really earned? And which fighter deserves so much more than what they are getting? Hashtag AskSplitPod. Wow, that's a great question, Pat.
It is really a great question. The fighter that's getting the best out of the UFC right now is clearly Jorge Masvidal. I think he just signed a new contract.
Good call.
He has a huge new contract. I think he's one of the top 3 paid fighters on the roster. He's essentially a 500 fighter who's a main event fighter. He has a cult following. He's also a heel to some, so he attracts a ton of attention.
He has zero takedown defense in a very wrestle-heavy division.
But I would say Jorge is getting the most out of his earning potential with the UFC. And who deserves more?
I mean,
Valentina Shevchenko?
I mean, she's a champion. I was assuming she gets paid very well.
Well, she could, I think, Valentina is just cool in general. I think the UFC could market some of the women better. I don't think they market them at all, actually. Valentina Shevchenko is like a Bond girl who is also like one of the baddest girls in the world, and they don't tell that story ever.
Yeah, that's fair. I think that's fair. My answer might be a little bit biased, but let me defend it real quick. I'm going to say Gilbert Burns.
That's a big surprise.
Oh, come on. For multiple reasons. Number one, he takes on any and all contenders. He's always down. Spoiler alert, people. The reason it's Chimaev versus Burns is because every single person that was ranked behind Burns said no. Bilal Muhammad was crying hysterically, begging them not to make that fight. Just to be clear. So let's not have any confusion.
You were in the room next door. You heard it all.
I'm just saying, let's not have any confusion about that. Second of all, Gilbert Burns is an extremely underrated fighter. He's already hinted that he's got several secret weapons for this upcoming Chimaev fight. He's bringing in a lot of, he said, mysterious new fighters for his camp. He's changing a lot of things. I can't wait. I genuinely think Burns is going to beat Chimaev.
I mean, it wouldn't be the wildest thing. I'm definitely looking forward to that fight. But now back to the question. Which fighter do you think deserves more?
Gilbert Burns.
Okay, who's getting the best out of the UFC?
Masvidal's a good pick, but my next one was going to be Paddy Pimblett. I mean, talk about fighting absolute nobodies.
Well, the guy's on a rookie contract, though. You think him making 60 grand next weekend, 60 to show and 60 to win, is getting the most out of it?
Well, yes, only because he's got an exclusive deal with Barstool Sports as a social media influencer, and I think he makes a lot of money outside with outside contracts.
All right, that's interesting. I would say, yeah, I wouldn't.
I mean, Masvidal's a good pick.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of some other people they really, really hype. That's not overly obvious. I think Israel gets a solid push.
Oh, Israel gets paid a ton.
Yeah.
Maybe. What about Robert Whittaker?
What about Francis Ngannou and the fighters who deserve so much more?
Oh yeah, Francis is about to walk away from the promotion over it.
So yeah, there's a couple names there for you, but I think Jorge's getting the most out of it, no doubt.
Yeah, and just while we're on the subject, I know this wasn't a question, but I have to ask: does it feel like to you, Fight Geek, as much as it feels like to me? I was expecting the loser of Colby versus Masvidal to lose some hype, but it feels like Masvidal's hype has gone from pretty decent to just snuffed out zero. I feel like he got annihilated on social media after the Colby fight. I feel like he's lost all the steam, all of it.
I mean, I think, yeah, if you're talking about Jorge Masvidal as a title contender, which I think was...
Or just a big-name pay-per-view draw.
Well, as a big-name pay-per-view draw, I think he'll always be there because people who don't follow the matchups and the last 10 fights and what he is don't really identify with that. They see Jorge Masvidal, the gangster-looking guy with the slick-back hair on ESPN, and they don't know that he's lost four out of his last 7. They just know that he's the gangster guy. So the casual fan is still going to tune in because there's an identifiable character attached to who Jorge is. So, I mean, he's much like Nate Diaz at this point where losses are piling up and they're never going to win a title, but they're always going to be entertainment stars for the UFC.
Yeah. Do you have any thoughts on Drake betting $250,000 on Jorge Masvidal to win?
It just goes to show what a casual fight fan he is, because there was no path to victory for Jorge, and every single person saw that.
That's like straight up, like, dude, just give it to orphans, Drake. Exactly. Give that money to orphans if you're going to bet that.
Every single person who knew who those guys were called that fight exactly how it went. So,
well, let's not go that far. I mean, I called it exactly how it went, but that, I'm obviously a talented expert, so.
Yeah, Nostradamus here, but yeah, so yeah, I think that fight went how I thought it was going to go. Jorge has one shot. From now on, Jorge does not need to be fighting top 3 or 4 guys. He needs to be fighting the celebrity headliner fights, the Nate Diaz's of the world, the Conor McGregor's of the world, things like that. Okay,
fair enough. We
beat that question into the ground, huh?
We did. All right, so there's a question by MMA by Milliken, but he says he left it on Instagram. Are you able to check that?
Yeah, I got it right here.
Oh.
He says, what if Stipe loses? Should he retire? Now, I don't know that Stipe has a fight.
I was going to say loses to who? To Ty?
Yeah, Ty. That's just proposed, and it was a lot of hearsay and rumors, I think, based off of Ty's Ariel interview. I haven't even seen or heard Stipe respond, or that could have just been a rumor. But if Stipe were to lose to Ty, I'd have a hard time seeing him walk away on a loss like that. I think he'd want to come back and walk away on his own terms on a victory. So I'll say no. Stipe doesn't walk away on a loss.
Okay, I would go ahead and disagree with you there. I mean, as a Stipe fan, I would hope that he would walk away if he lost to Ty. Not that that's a humiliating loss, especially at this point. It's just that, Stipe is viewed by many as the greatest heavyweight in UFC history. Well, and rightfully so.
Only be down from there, right?
Yeah. So I would just think, if you lose to Ty, what are you trying to prove, right? What's next? I mean, you're not going to get a title shot anytime soon, so I don't see why he would stick around.
Good point.
So, we'll see. Okay, moving on to another question by our main man, another Split Podcast OG. This is Eduardo at Landacrew. He says, this is a hard one. What's the best non-UFC MMA event that you would recommend others to see? #AskSplitPod. Fight Geek, I'll let you start us off with this one.
Well, I mean, this is incredibly hard. You could go back to Pride, 2004 to 2008. Most of those cards are absolutely bonkers. I mean, those cards used to be absolutely stacked. I'm looking, and I've watched a lot of fights. But the Nick Diaz Pride versus Gomi was one that sticks out. I think that was Pride 31 or 33, the last one. So go ahead. I'm looking this up. You call a few out.
Yeah. So I would say I've got a card in mind. I'm just trying to figure out. Okay, so Bellator 221. I was lucky enough to attend this live. This was in Illinois, back when I lived in Illinois. Bellator 221, Chandler versus Pitbull was the main event. And then the co-main event was Douglas Lima versus MVP1. So that right there, those two fights right there were so iconic, so fun, so exciting. And I would just say, yeah, Bellator 221 effing rocked.
Yep, and mine, I found it. The one I would say is Pride 33, the second coming, 2007. The headliner was Dan Henderson versus Wanderlei Silva. Dan Henderson knocked out Wanderlei. The co-main was Nick Diaz versus Takanori Gomi, one of the only Gogo Platas in the history of MMA. Nick was stoned off his ass. Legendary performance. Then there's Shogun Hua versus Alistair Overeem. Sokoju versus Nogueira, Karatanov, Frank Trigg. I mean, that card was ridiculous.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Absolutely. And I think that's all... I think those are good picks. Okay, so moving on. This question comes from our man, Zan Bando. Welcome back. I have 3 questions instead of the usual 2. All right, Zan, we'll see if we've got time. I don't know. Two questions is good, but three might be too much here. Where does UFC London rank amongst the biggest UK UFC events of all time? Well, my first answer is that it's going to obviously pale in comparison to, was it McGregor versus Barrow?
That was in Ireland, wasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, isn't that?
Sure. That was more hype than the Volkov main event, no doubt.
Wait, now you've got me. Am I about to humiliate myself? Is Ireland part of UK? This is, oh my gosh, this is so embarrassing. Well, it's about whether it's Northern Ireland or not. Oh, you get what I'm saying, man. Okay, Northern Ireland is part of the UK. I guess the rest of Ireland isn't, but I'm counting Ireland, okay? And if people get mad at me, they can deal with it.
So, yeah, I mean, this does not really rank versus some of those cards. Just not enough huge name value. I'm sure that, the crowd will be completely into it and it'll be bananas. But, yeah, I don't think that based on name value, it's the biggest of all time.
Also, Till versus Masvidal felt much bigger.
Also, there's a war going on over there, so I'm not sure how excited all the people are going to be or how many...
Well, easy, Fight Geek. We're not trying to get all political. Easy.
I'm just saying.
You were screaming at me for mentioning it. Now you're bringing it up.
I'm just saying, there may not be as many people traveling for events. And
sorry, everyone. We're trying to keep it non-political, but Fight Geek just keeps on insisting. So, okay, all right.
My bad. Okay.
Next question. Dana White was featured on Impulsive, the podcast hosted by Logan Paul, and said that piracy is a big issue in MMA. Will it ever stop? Laugh out loud, fuck no. Yeah. Are you kidding? Of course it won't stop, Zan. What are we talking about here?
They've been trying to stop it for a while.
It will definitely not stop. What? As it gets more expensive, it's going to increase.
That is true. And it is getting more expensive. The cable, all of it is more expensive. So. Yeah,
absolutely.
And then his third part is almost impossible to answer. Best MMA fight ever.
Yeah, and I feel like I feel like we've answered multiple versions of this question many times before, just not quite as. Yeah, I mean, not
on
this
top
exact
of your
way.
head that kind of stands out, or no?
I mean, if I name a fight, everyone's gonna start crying and say, "What are you talking about? Why aren't you naming, Matt Hughes versus Frank Trigg too?" And everything like that. I mean, I'm biased. I thought that Whitaker Romero 2 was jaw dropping insanity. But I saw that live, so I'm probably biased.
Yeah, I mean, best MMA fight ever.
I mean, Rory McDonald, Robbie Lawler 2 is amazing.
That's all the low hanging fruit, right?
I mean, Covington Usman 1. Covington Usman 1.
That didn't move me.
That was pretty great. Oh, that was pretty great.
I mean, Bisping versus Silva in London, that was an unbelievably epic fight. Silva versus Sonnen 1. I was on the edge of my seat that whole fight.
That's a good one, actually.
I'm going to keep thinking. Best MMA fights ever. Back and forth wars. I mean, the Korean Zombie versus Leonard Garcia. 1.
Said nobody except for you effing nerd. Okay.
Well, isn't that a back and forth war from WEC days?
I mean, I'll be honest. I only saw that once.
Strike Force, Nick Diaz versus
Paul Daly. Yeah, but that was only one round, wasn't it? Wasn't that only one round?
Yeah, but there was like 5 fights in one round.
Yeah, no, I agree. You're giving no love to Covington Usman 1, huh?
That doesn't even register.
Okay. Well, you're just wrong, and I'm just right.
I mean, I grew up watching Tito versus Chuck 1. That was like the heat versus all these guys is fake.
Liddell didn't get nearly as bothered by Tito as Kamaru did against Colby.
What do you mean?
Tito
didn't want to fight Chuck as the champion, and then, it took forever for him to make that fight. Chuck was chomping at the bit to beat Tito's ass for years leading up to that.
And then what happened?
Then he beat his ass.
That's what I'm saying. So how can you say it's one of the greatest MMA fights? What are you talking about?
Because the build-up and the
action. Well, that's a whole different... You're talking about build-up. Oh, you're talking about build-up? What? I thought we were talking about fights.
Phil. If we're going off just action, there's been a lot of fights between, no names with no heat that have been better than Covington Usman.
Okay, I think you've got a weird hatred for Covington Usman, but that's okay.
I just think that it's really not.
I thought it was pretty awesome, to be honest, but okay.
I think Izzy versus Gastelum's a better fight.
No, you're wrong.
Really?
I don't agree with that.
I think that Eddie Alvarez versus Justin Gaethje's a better fight.
Okay. I mean, there's truth to that. By the way, hang on. We've got some breaking news, so I do have to mention it. This has just come in a few minutes ago. Breaking: Rose Namajunas will defend her strawweight championship belt against Carla Esparza in the co-main event of UFC 274. It is official. So that's Namajunas versus Esparza 2 at UFC 274. Thoughts on that, Fight Geek?
It's the right fight to make. Carla deserves it. Rose wants it. I mean, this is no-brainer.
Yeah. Oh, well, okay. Well, thank you, Dr. Obvious. Oh, really? So, they both want it. It's the fight to make. I was asking you who's going to win, bruh.
Rose via unanimous decision.
Damn it, I agree. But I think Carla could be really weirdly problematic.
I mean, Carla's very good at what she does. And
remember, she beat Rose. She beat Rose.
Rose is a technician.
But she beat Rose. She's already beaten her, remember?
Yeah, what, 10 years ago?
Yeah.
10 years ago.
Yeah, basically,
so
yes.
Does that matter at this point?
I mean, I think it might matter a little bit.
It matters for Carla's chance to get the opportunity, but I don't think that fight plays into the action. Rose is a much different fighter than she used to be. At that point, she was very, very grappling and submission heavy, and now she's one of the best strikers in the UFC.
Yeah. No, I agree. I absolutely have Rose winning that by unanimous decision.
And back to best fights ever from Zane. I have 2 more I want to toss out there.
It's Zan, and he will get upset. He likes the pronunciation.
Joanna versus Weili's a no-brainer on that list, and so is Cyborg Nunes.
Yeah. I mean, Cyborg Nunez was.
Cyborg
You
Nunez,
keep naming beatdowns, dude. You keep naming
What
beatdowns.
do you mean? That wasn't a beatdown. That was two people in the middle.
Nunez beat the crap out of her.
My favorite fight ever is that fight.
Okay. More
Cyborg
than
Nunez
Lawler McDonald too?
Yeah, man. It was exhilarating for 90 seconds, and both of them just put it out there. Yeah, I mean, obviously, is it the most technical fight ever? No, but when you're talking about, I don't know.
You know what fight I loved is Jose Aldo versus really both Jose Aldo versus Chad Mendes fights.
Yeah, the second one was much more competitive.
I meant the second, really, basically.
Yeah. So that was a tough fight. Conor versus Nate 2 is a great fight. Lots of drama.
Yeah, Conor Nate 2 is an amazing one. Absolutely agreed. Again, Whitaker Romero 2. For anyone who wants to rewatch that.
That's a good one. Yeah, I mean, Gaethje, Michael Johnson.
Oh, Gaethje, Michael Johnson. That might have to be top my list. That's
an unbelievable fight.
That was a great one. Absolutely agreed. Okay, all right. So, do we have anything left, Fight Geek?
I think that does it for tonight, man.
All right. Take us away, baby.
All right, guys. As usual, you can find us on iTunes, Spotify, YouTube, Google Play, Stitcher, and more. I'm at the Fight Geek MMA. He's at Phil the MMA Dude, and we are at Split_Podcast. It's 4 words, the Split Decision Podcast. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll talk to you next week. Peace.
Peace.